you wonder about life. Had that newspaper not been on the table, open at that page, then my whole life would have been entirely different, I would think. I had been working in a job studying electrical engineering, and I didn't see myself going anywhere, and I got bored with the study. And the Korean War had broken out in 1950, and I was looking at the newspaper and it said, join the Air Force and learn to fly. And so I made application for that and was posted over to Korea. I must say it was a bit of a shock for a young Australian boy coming from a hot summer's season to go to snow. It was the first snow I'd ever seen. I had an 18-month flying training program and about 3 months of introduction to jet flying and combat flying. In Korea we were given 2 familiarisation flights, one on the west and one on the east. We had to convert to the Gloucester Meteor, and we were then deemed to be suitable to be sent on operations. We arrived in, I think it was the beginning of February of 1953. The war finished on July the 27th of 1953, and I had just turned 21. The place was very bleak, it had been through a lot. And then we were escorted to our accommodation, 6 to a tent. And in the middle of the winter in Korea, a tent is not a very friendly and homely place. But we set about making it so. We scrounged around and got a few things, made a few changes to the interior. And also in the middle of it, there was a very large oil-fired heater. It had to be watched carefully. There was a nasty time when some people were burnt to death when this thing must have exploded and set their tent on fire. The worst part, of course, was when you were on dawn patrol, which meant that you had to get up at about 4 o'clock in the morning and down to your aeroplane by about 5:30 or 6 o'clock. The idea was to go into North Korea to try and catch transport before they made it to safety. And that was our job, was to keep the transport off the road. We also were given targets, important strategic targets. The Meteor was a very heavily armed aeroplane, and so we could do a lot of damage. It was a short-range aeroplane, so at the end of about an hour, if you weren't close to home, you were in a bit of trouble. So we had to watch our fuel very carefully. We were doing dives into deep valleys and then pulling out with maximum power on to get out. That caught a few people out. I was coming back from a mission one day and I was following a chap, and next thing he disappeared. I thought, where on earth's he gone? He'd run out of fuel on final approach and just dropped out of the sky. Fortunately he survived, and I don't think the aeroplane was much good after that, but he was. Every so often somebody wouldn't come back, and I think in the long term it was about 42 killed in 3 years and 7 or 9 taken prisoner of war. I think the furthest north out of Kimpo that we went was the capital, Pyongyang. And over on the east coast, there's a town called Wonsan. We went over there, and that was about as far north as we went. They say Korea was the forgotten war. It wasn't forgotten because in order to forget something, you have to know something. And people just didn't know about it. There was one occasion when an American guy in a Jeep said, I'm going into Seoul, do you want to come for a ride? So we drove into Seoul, and it was, of course, it had been devastated by the fighting going on, and it's changed hands a lot of times. But it was later on when the opportunity arose to revisit as a veteran that I got a better understanding about some of the history of Korea. I think, wow, that's really an interesting place. Out of that, you get the feeling that, yep, we did something good. The real worry is, of course, is the war has never actually officially ended. The worry is that, okay, we've done our job, but as we look at the world today to turn around and perhaps become a problem again, and in this case a larger problem because we're starting to talk nuclear. I can't see Korea becoming a united nation, unfortunately. The North Korean people are so different now to the South Korean people, and it's not their fault, of course. It's the regime under which they've been living. At my age, I think, well, it's not going to worry me, but you still think about it. You think about your own family, for instance.